What's going on, everyone? So Julie, as a story walker, going to be very interesting to see how she progresses as a character and that ability, right? I have my concerns, I have my reservations about it, right? Like, I don't want her to be able to just go and correct everything. Like, I don't want her to be able to just go back in time and then, boom, there it's over. If that's the case, then just make season 4 2 episodes long, have her spend an episode trying to figure it out, and then the next episode she goes back in time and solves it, right? Keep hearing hey, you can't write the story or you can't fix the story. Once the story is written, that is it. No changing it, no take backsies. It's already over, right? And I do like that. I do like that idea. I do like that concept. But I can see her trying to learn, navigate, and figure out how to overcome that. How to be that one, right? There's a very real possibility that she's not the only story walker ever, right? So, where did the others fail? Kind of like how Tabitha and Jade are currently this iteration of Tabitha or Miranda and Christopher. And you go all the way back to the very beginning, right? What if that's the same thing with Julie? What if these characters, there's been several story walkers who were just chosen and entered the ruins and were able to walk through these various stories, but they all died, right? They all were there, right? Like, also begs the question, who ended up killing them? But obviously we saw Julie attempt to try to change a story and saving her father. She failed, right? We'll see if that was, a lot of people kind of have their own theories about that was a future event, it's not the real time, or it was a different kind of timeline. Like, people are trying to justify why Jim may potentially be alive, and that's a real possibility, right? But it does kind of feel, and I've talked about this before in other instances, that this is the iteration of characters that are going to overcome the obstacles that no one else was able to do, right? So assuming that there were other story walkers before, they were never able to rewrite the story, they were never able to change the script, but they failed. Julie will be the one to overcome that. Another big question is Marielle and Randall, do they have the capability? Do they have the ability to do the same thing, story walk? Or is it just simply a Julie thing, right? Yes, all three were in the ruins together, but it was due to the music box curse, right? It wasn't necessarily because they stumbled across it and they ended up appearing there, like Julie did. No, like, for as far as we know, Julie's the only one that's capable of doing this. But it is also possible that Randall and Marielle may end up discovering the same thing, right? Obviously, Randall is which is understandable. I mean, the dude got ripped to shreds by monsters, right? But he is very like, I'm staying as far away from that place as possible. And you may ask, okay, well, if he can't story walk, well then why did he have this sense? Why do you have it? Because he was there spiritually, right? Like, they have a connection to that place because they were literally trapped there, whether it was through their minds or their essence or spirit or whatever the explanation may be. There's clearly a connection to that and those three because of the music box curse. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can story walk, but I could potentially see that being a possibility. And it does beg the question of, like, could the three of them together change the story, right? So you have Julie, who's trying to figure it out, trying to navigate the story walking, and she probably fails time and time again. But if you had two other sort of story walkers, could you maybe potentially change the story? Again, these three have the connection of being in that place together. They're all three kind of broken now, right? Like, they have this connection. So let's go under the assumption that they all can story walk, that it's not just strictly to Julie, just for argument's sake. Again, it's just fun video theory. Let's keep it simple, right? So let's assume that they all can. If they all three go individually, well, they're limited, right? They can only do so many things. Think of like the Power Rangers or, Voltron or, Captain Planet or whatever, right? Like, you need multiple people to form the Megazord or, be able to take down the monster. You could see something similar in the sense of these three as far as characters go and the potential of them story walking, right? So, for example, Jim Julie wasn't able to convince Jim to leave, right? Like, he's just kind of like, hey, I'm like, what's going on? Like, and he's all confused. Boom, Man in Yellow shows up and ends up killing Jim, right? Well, if you had, say, Marielle and Randall, I mean, you could just grab Jim and get him out of there. Or knock him out and pick him up and get him out of there. Or maybe one could distract the Man in Yellow while the others get him out of there. Or whatever, right? Like, that's just like an example. But, like, let's say, for example, like the tunnels. How, Julie saw Victor, or heard. She didn't technically see it. But she heard Victor and Tabitha, her mother, in the tunnels. Right? Like, let's say, obviously this didn't happen, just an example, but let's say Tabitha would have died, right? And the monsters were the ones that ended up killing her and whatnot, right? And her and Victor both died. Well, Julie going in there probably isn't going to be able to slow down the monsters, grab her mother, grab Victor, but the three of them might be able to, right? Like, Randall could probably pick up Tabitha and run out of there with her, or kind of get Victor to run, or, maybe they could distract while the other does. Like, I could see something like that, especially if she's going to go back in time. Again, we don't know this, and I don't necessarily want this to happen, but if she is to, let's say, go back in time to save the children and do all that stuff, right? Prevent FROMVILLE from ever actually happening. It would be a lot easier if she had others, right? Her going back to FROMVILLE and having to stop the Man in Yellow and, the children from being sacrificed and all the townspeople and them potentially trying to kill her and get her out of the way, right? Like, it just, how do you do that alone? But if you have Randall and Marielle and you come up with a plan and the three of you go together and, one person gets the children out, one person distracts the people, one person distracts the Man in Yellow, and then you're able to save the children, boom, save the town, right? Like, that is something I could see. I just think it'd be really hard to just do, like, I think it's easier to change any story when you have three minds, right? When you have three people working on a project together, it's usually easier. You also don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, but, like, getting something like this where it's a task, if you have to move, 100 bricks of hay, right? Like, or stacks of hay, right? Is it easier to do it by yourself, or is it easier to do it with three people? It's easier to do it with three people, right? So if you kind of go by that, if all three can story walk, it would make things very easy. Right? Julie might not be able to change the story, change the script by herself. She might not be able to have an impact at all. We see that she can interact, right? As we saw with her dropping the rope to Boyd and whatnot, right? And her obviously talking to her dad and trying to get her dad out. But interacting and actually changing the story are two very different things. And I don't know if Julie by herself would be able to change the story by herself. But if you get all three together, and all three are able to kind of step into the Twilight Zone together and save the day, that I think makes a lot more sense. That I think it's like, okay, well, three is better than one, right? Three people operating, working together, right? Especially if they can kind of put, their I mean, they don't have conflict, but, put, like, I'm sure Randall has a different idea than Marielle, than Julie. That sort of gift, is that something that potentially corrupts Randall or Marielle? Right? Marielle, she's an ex-addict, right? We saw her relapse, right? Does that kind of affect her? Like, can FROMVILLE kind of mess with them, manipulate them, kind of get in their minds, right? Like, you have that power, you have that ability. You need all three to be willing to kind of be on the same side. Come up with the same goals, okay, we're going to go in this together. Here's the plan. Let's drop the plan together. Let's work on this together, right? Like, this is what we're going to do. Something along those lines, right? So I think that could be an interesting kind of point in a way that they could approach this, is like, she can't change the story by herself, but she can change the story, all of them together. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like that idea? Do you think, like, yes, if if all of them together, three is stronger than one, right? If the three of them together can go in and work together to kind of try to, save Fromville, or, change a certain story or whatever. Do you think, like, no, like, don't have that ability at all? If I'm being honest, I kind of lean towards, like, I would prefer them not to be able to change the story at all. I'd prefer them just to rather gather intel, but still could see them potentially changing a story at some point. It kind of feels like that's kind of the build up point, right? But again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, whether you want something like this to happen, whether you don't want something like this to happen, whether you kind of want, like, yeah, maybe the three of them go and help together, and like I said, just get the intel or whatever, right? Kind of have some maybe not change the story, but kind of be able to affect certain things that maybe kind of affect other things, right? Kind of a domino effect. But again, I feel whatever your thoughts are. I'd love to hear it either way, so let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.